Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Influence Economy podcast. I'm your host, Shayna Davis, and I'm so glad that you're here. But before we get started, I would love if you would do me a favor. So, wherever it is that you're listening to this episode, I want you to take a screenshot. With that screenshot, I want you to post it on your social media, tag us here at Shayna Rattler Davis. And then I just want to hear your biggest aha moment or your biggest takeaway from this episode. And the reason why I do that is not so much about the downloads or any other vanity metric that, if you listen to the show, I don't care so much about just the visibility of things. But what I do care about is that, in my opinion, I feel like far too many women are seen but not paid well, and they don't know where to start. So the more times that these episodes are shared, the more people that can be exposed to the shifts that are going to be required in order for them to own their influence. So thank you in advance for being willing to do that. Today's episode is going to be a wake up call and a gold mine. If you actually implement the things that we're talking about today, then this can actually be a gold mine, because here's what most people won't tell you. Here's what most podcast gurus will not tell you is that your podcast, it could be your biggest revenue generator. We're taught about, affiliate links, not talking about that. Not talking about through merchandise. And I'm definitely not talking about waiting for ad sponsors to come knocking, because the real money, the real opportunity that you have with your podcast is stepping into corporate contracts, the kind that pay you 25,000, 100,000, even up to seven figures. I have a colleague, by the way, that just recently landed a corporate contract that's almost a milli. I think it's $975,000 corporate contract, right? And so I always talk about, like, why are we stepping over dollars to get to dimes? So again, you can do affiliate links, you can sell merchandise, you can have ads, but what I'm telling you is that that is not going to be the most scalable and predictable way to create income from your podcast. Now, just an aside, because I don't know how many of you actually know my background, but several years ago, I actually had a business called Corporate Attraction with Shayna Rattler. That's my maiden name. And in that business, I taught small business owners, entrepreneurs, and influencers how to land corporate contracts and how to land corporate sponsors. So I've landed contracts myself. I've taught thousands of other business owners how to land contracts. But one of the things I noticed, and the reason why I introduced this whole concept of the influence economy, is because now that I have a show, it's so much easier for me to land those contracts than it was years ago when I was learning how to get my foot in the door with corporations. So this is just a way for you to bring your voice and your audience to their brand. So let's talk about how to make that your reality. So I want to start with the misstep that's keeping most podcasters broke. And if you're not broke, most of you are not making much money from your podcast, if we'll just call it what it is. Most podcasters are chasing listeners instead of leverage. I'm going to say that again. Most of us are chasing listeners instead of leverage. We're obsessing over download stats, hoping that it's going to attract sponsors who will throw you a few $100 an episode. And this is not a business model. That is burnout disguised as ambition, right? There's a lot that goes into doing a podcast. And for me, it's more important that anything that I do in my business, that I'm actually able to leverage it as an asset, and most times able to leverage it as an income producing asset. And that goes beyond just a couple of $100. Because let's be honest, again, if you think about all of the things that it takes to produce a podcast, you are going to be spending money on systems and tools and equipment. So if you're only going to be getting a few $100s a month from affiliate ads and some of these other things, I'm not going to say it's not worth it. That's your choice. But here's the reality. Brands with real marketing budgets, they don't care about your follower count. They care about your alignment. How does what it is that you're talking about on your show align with their bigger brand and the goals of their brand. So, are you speaking to the audience that they want to reach? Do you have influence, not just impressions? Because when you do, you're not a content creator like we can oftentimes see our podcast is just another form of creating content. Then you become a media partner. Right. And so I just want to give that distinction there because there's a lot of different ways that you can bring in corporate dollars from your show. You can bring in corporate dollars as a media partner, and we'll talk about some of the ways that you can do that in a little bit. But you also can use the expertise that you demonstrate throughout your show as an opportunity for you to get contracts to do engagements for them and their people and their teams. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We'll get to that in a minute. So, what are corporate brands actually buying? Let's decode the corporate buyer's mindset. They're not looking for influencers, right? It bothers me when people call my show the influencer economy. Most influencers are not making real money. And when I'm talking about being a person of influence, being an influential woman, I'm not talking about somebody that is a lifestyle brand that they get paid to share different people's products. Again, nothing wrong with that. That's just not what we're talking about over here. And that's not what corporations are looking for. They're not looking for influencers. They're looking for strategic vehicles to amplify their messaging. So this means that when they're writing a check, these are the things that they are investing in. Write these down. Number one, they're investing in audience access that they don't already own, right? That's where the audience of your show can come in. They're writing a check for brand alignment that reinforces their values and their message. That's how you determine whether or not this corporation is a good potential partner for you, because there has to be brand alignment and synergy between your audience and your messaging, and their messaging, their values, and the audience that they're looking to reach. And then lastly, they're looking for authority association because working with you elevates them. Right? This is the mindset that they have when they're looking to write these big checks. And these are the mindsets that you too have to adopt as the podcast host. So while you're over here wondering if your mic quality is good enough, they're wondering, can this woman help us move our message with credibility? Positioning is everything. But you know that I say all the time, visibility is just step one. But let me be clear, and I've said this before, visibility without strategy is noise. Visibility without strategy is noise, but visibility with authority becomes leverage. And here's what separates the women landing real contracts from the ones who get ghosted in the inbox. Again, write these down. They have brand clarity. They know that their podcast isn't just content, they recognize that it's a positioning pool. They have assets in place. Think about media kits, sponsor decks, how that they can show that their messaging speaks B2B fluently. What does that mean? Business to business. Many of us are accustomed to positioning our show, positioning our products, our services, our businesses for consumers. You want to show that your message can fluently speak business to business. I'll talk more about that in another episode. They pitch with outcomes, not ego. They sell the results of partnership, not just airtime, right? So again, you're not just looking at your podcast anymore as just ways to have guests, as just ways to get airtime. They're not interested only in like, hey, I'm going to give you spots on my show, give you the opportunity to talk about your stuff on my show. Can you do that? Yes. Is that what I'm talking about when I'm talking about corporate contracts? Not all the way. They consider ways that their expertise can help a company reach their goals. So, for example, a lot of times we think about, okay, well, if I'm going to get a corporate contract, then I'm going to ask a corporation to sponsor my show, or I'm going to do a mini series on my show that they can participate in and they'll pay me for that. Yes, they will. But that's not where the real checks come in. I want you to think about how can you use your expertise to help them reach their goals, to help their team improve. So for example, you may be a sales coach. What can you help their sales teams do? They call it sales enablement inside of a corporation. What about change management, leadership development, becoming efficient and productive? Take myself, for example. I position myself as an influence expert. I can work with their leaders on how to make sure that their influence actually translates into bottom line results. So again, There's things that you can do to get a check from a corporation for your show. But what I'm teaching you is using your show as the magnet for these contracts that you can actually go in and do training and workshops and summits and lunch and learns. And, like there's so many different things that you can do to get high five figure, six figure, and sometimes even seven figure checks just based off of what you know, just based off of your area of expertise. So these women that are getting these types of contracts, the type of women that do that, they know how to make their podcast bankable. And if you're listening to this show, so can you. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk to you about how you can use your podcast to build relationships with decision makers. We'll be right back. Ready to turn your influence into income? Take the Influence Growth Assessment. In just minutes, you'll uncover the next steps to grow your visibility, attract bigger opportunities, and boost your profitability. Visit myinfluencestyle.com to take the assessment today. A new era of success is waiting. Let's make it yours. All right, welcome back to this solo episode of the Influence Economy, where we're talking about how you can use your show to land corporate contracts. So, in this segment, I want to talk to you about how you can build relationships with decision makers, because that's where the rubber really meets the road. And that's where most people typically get I'm not going to say confused, because if you don't know what you're doing, the confusion is not the problem, but that's where most people don't know what to do. Like, how do I meet a decision maker? How do I get FaceTime with them, or how do I get phone time with them in order to be able to get these checks? So now we're going to get tactical, because I know you want to know how to actually use your podcast to get in the room with decision makers. So here's a few real ways that you can do that. So write these down. Number one, feature the right guest. So invite corporate leaders, chief marketing officers, DEI officers, head of HR development, brand directors, invite them onto your show. Not because they're going to promote the episode, but because the invitation is the door opener. Sometimes, if you don't know exactly how to do it, the most difficult thing can be to even be able to get their attention to have a conversation about how it is that your expertise can help them to begin with. So, when you have a show, being able to invite them on as a guest is a great way to get your foot in the door, to begin to have additional conversations about how you can help them, because this isn't about content. These episodes, when you invite corporate decision makers as guests, is about connection. You're giving them value up front, and then you're starting a warm relationship that can evolve into a paid partnership. Because if you're having guests on your show, you know that more than likely before you record and after you record, you're having some conversations. So in the beginning, before you start recording your episode, that's when you're just going to exchange pleasantries, ask how their day has been going, kind of shoot the breeze a little bit. But then after you record, after you have already demonstrated value with them and demonstrated your expertise, that's when you can begin to say things like, I would love to schedule a time to talk to you, and anybody else would have to be included in order to get a yes, of how I can begin to help your organization. And then you fill in the blank with whatever it is that your expertise is. It's a great, great way. Oh my God, if I would have had a podcast years ago. Number two, create themed mini series along or aligned with industry trends. These are the things that you most likely think about as a podcast host that's looking to land corporate contracts. If you know a brand is focusing on women in leadership, innovation, diversity, sales, technology, STEM, all the different things that companies can focus on, create a mini series on your podcast that speaks to that. Then you can pitch them on sponsoring it. You're not asking for charity, you're offering alignment. So they can sponsor it if it's something that they care about. They can be on the show if it's something they care about. There's a lot of different things that you can do with that, but those are the things that of how you use your show directly, right? Number three, turn your podcast into a relationship building machine. Follow up with every single guest, especially the corporate ones, with a tailored proposal on how you can collaborate beyond the mic. Now, begin to seed that, drop the seeds for that when you are recording the show. You want to share times of like, I've helped companies do X, Y, and Z. I help organizations do X, Y, and Z. And here's the thing, even if you've never worked with a corporation before, talk about how your area of expertise has helped people or can help people during the actual episode. Then, after you stop recording, is when you can start to begin to have that initial conversation. But then you're going to want to follow up with, I say here, a tailored proposal, but that's not really what I teach. What I teach is get the meeting so that you can have what I call a needs discovery conversation. And then you pitch to them what it is that you would like to offer them. Okay. Most people, so what you want to do is when you follow up with them, you want to mention like what stood out in the interview, share a unique idea that aligns with their brand, and connect the dots between your audience and their goals. Because most people, they stop at thank you for being on the show, but the next step really is here's how we can partner. And if you do that consistently, you won't be pitching partnerships, you'll be closing them. This is a great, great way. Oh my God, if I had a podcast back in the day. So the next move for women who want to make bank with their podcast. So here's what I know. More than likely, you didn't start your show to be popular. You started it to be powerful, right? And hopefully you started it to be profitable. And if you didn't, I'm hoping that as you're listening to the episodes here on the influence economy, that you're beginning to see your show as something that can not just be powerful, but that can also be profitable. If you're ready to turn your podcast into a revenue engine that attracts corporate sponsors, brand partnerships, high ticket opportunities like speaking engagements, traditional book deals, I have built the blueprint for you on that. So inside of my digital course, it's called Make Millions Podcasting. I show you exactly how to position your show for premium partnerships. I show you how to pitch corporate brands with confidence. I show you how to turn your mic into a magnet for big checks. Inside of that, you're going to get my pitch scripts and my proposal templates. You're going to get the exact strategy that I use to land 5 and 6 figure corporate partnerships. You're going to get step-by-step guidance on how to turn your podcast into a brand building business asset. If you're done playing small and ready to podcast like a powerhouse, this course is your next move. So you can go to makemillionspodcasting.com. Again, that's makemillionspodcasting.com to enroll in Make Millions Podcasting today. So that's it for today on the influence economy. Remember, your voice holds value. Your show is a strategy, and the right alignment that can change your entire income trajectory. Talk soon. Bye-bye.